Okay, so today we're going to look at trigonometric ratios. And basically, these things are called sine, cosine, and tangent. Not sin, cos, and tan. I can't say that enough. So, one easy way to remember these things is the phrase SOHCAHTOA. SOHCAHTOA. Because with that, if you look at it, sine is always the opposite side over the hypotenuse. SOH. And cosine is always the adjacent over the hypotenuse, CAH, and tangent is always the opposite over the adjacent, TOA. And of course, don't forget when you're labeling your sides here, and you have a right triangle, across from the right angle is always the hypotenuse, and across from the angle you're looking at is the opposite, and the side right next to the angle is the adjacent. But the one that's not the hypotenuse, of course, which is also going to be right next to the angle. And with each one of these, it's always sine of some angle equals this side over this side, and cosine of an angle, tangent of an angle. This Greek letter theta stands for an angle measure. So what you're going to do is you're going to usually, if you're finding a side with this, which is what we'll do tomorrow, you're going to get an angle, and you're going to get one of these two sides, and you need to figure out what the other side is, just with some basic algebra skills. But today, all we're going to do is we're going to label the sides, and we're going to recognize what ratio are we looking at here. Okay, so if you look at this diagram here, what we have are two triangles that are exactly the same, and on the left side, we're looking for sine, cosine, and tangent of angle A, and on the right side, we're looking for sine, cosine, and tangent of angle B. So let's start with angle A. And we're going to look from this angle right here. And what we want to do first is we want to label the sides. So first off, across from the right angle, right across from C here, 10, also the largest side, that's our hypotenuse. Okay, great. Now, across from the angle we're looking at, angle A, that side is the opposite because it's opposite the angle that we're looking at. And then the side that's left is the adjacent. Also, one way to look at it is this arc for the angle you're looking at always touches the hypotenuse and the adjacent, no matter what. So if you can label the hypotenuse, which is not that bad, then the other one here is the adjacent. So let's figure these things out. So sine of angle A is the opposite over the hypotenuse. Or in our case, the opposite is 8 over the hypotenuse, which is 10. So just 8 over 10. Or if you want to reduce that, you can make it 4 over 5. So cosine is the adjacent over the hypotenuse, which in this example is 6 over 10. Or if you reduce it, 3 over 5. And then finally, the tangent is the opposite over the adjacent. The opposite is 8. The adjacent is 6. So we have 8 over 6, or reduce that to 4 over 3. Now let's take a look at this other example. In this one, we're looking at angle B. So everything we do is relative to angle B here. All right, start off by labeling the sides. So across from the right angle, it's 10. That's our hypotenuse, across from the right angle. Across from angle B, right down there, that's 6. That's the side that's opposite angle B. Notice how it's different from the other one. And then we have adjacent for 8. So if you switch these angles, the hypotenuse stays the same, but the opposite and the adjacent switch places. That's basically what happens when you switch which angle you're looking at. So for our sense, we're dealing with this green diagram, and sine is, again, opposite over hypotenuse, which in this case is 6 over 10, or 3 over 5. Cosine is the adjacent over the hypotenuse, which in our case is 8 over 10, or reduce that to 4 over 5. And finally, tangent is the opposite over the adjacent, which is 6 over 8, or 3/4 when you reduce it. So one super helpful thing here that does pop up on the Regency exam all the time. Sine of one angle equals cosine of the other angle. See how they switch places? And ditto here. Sine of this angle equals cosine of this angle. Or cosine of this equals sine of this. So when you switch which angle you're looking at, it switches the sine and the cosine measures. Also, for tangent, you'll notice that the tangent of these complementary angles is the reciprocal.